order. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have a revised agenda in front of you, which includes 2 additional items at the end of the discussion portion of the agenda. But actually, before I get to that, let me take the roll. Members present on City Council are myself, Mayor Marl, Council members Gearbaugh, CO, McClellan, Mitchell, Tahar, and Dillon. From City staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Bennett, Police Chief Rennick, Parks and Rec Director Scruggs. Is DPW Director Fordyce? Yes, he is. He is here as well, as so is our Superintendent Skull and City Superintendent Rubel. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd please sign in the back to my left, we would appreciate that. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended, noting 2 additional changes, or 2 additional additions, excuse me, under the discussion portion of the agenda. There is a revised memo dated June the 5th regarding the FY18 EDC budget revised, and it was my understanding from the City Manager, Mr. Gearbaugh, and I apologize for putting you on the spot. Was there an item under the consent portion of the agenda that you wanted to remove for discussion?
It was the EDC FY18 budget, so I think if this is the memo.
Yeah. So we'll actually just remove that right now.
Cool.
So that's C-17-92, is that correct, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yes.
So that will be the first item under new business. And again, we'll entertain a revised consent agenda when we get to that portion of the agenda. So noting those changes, are there any other additions to the agenda or any questions about the changes that have been made?
Move to approve as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. It's been properly moved by Councilman Gearbaugh to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we do not need to entertain that motion. So it brings us to the one presentation of the evening, and we're very honored to introduce to the community as well as council our new code enforcement officer. We have Gary and his wife Joan Sheska. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yes, excellent. Do you want to come forward? Mr. Rubel, do you want to introduce your new colleague?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just give some brief background and then let Gary himself provide some information. Gary certainly is doing a great job on his second week. He's you might say, a go-getter. He picks up everything quickly and doing a great job out there in the field as well as in the office. His family background, he can talk more about his Saline experience. There will be an article in the next FYI giving some more summary information about both he and Steve Maciag, the new building inspector, who actually was his first day today. And like I say, they're both very energetic, very self-motivated, and they just jump right in there. They not only help me, but they help each other, especially in the learning phase. Is very instrumental in starting off on a good program. Thank you.
Very good. Gary, we're delighted to have you with us this evening. Is there anything that you'd like to share?
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to join the team here with the City of Saline. Take code enforcement officer as a big responsibility. I try to be forward with the citizens, and education, I think, is the main thing of why we have these ordinances and why it's important to upkeep the ordinances of the city. And I think that goes quite a ways rather than an aggressive approach. I settled in 2001. Our family settled in the Saline area. My children attended Saline area schools, which I can't say enough about. And the community in itself, all the activities and civic groups that we've enjoyed. So once again, I'm very happy to be with the city and working to keep it a great place.
Very good. And Gary, it's my understanding that you have an impressive background. You retired as a battalion chief from the Livonia Fire Department, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Very good. Well, another outstanding community that puts a strong emphasis on quality of life, so I'm sure you learned a lot there. How can I put this delicately? First, we welcome you. I've heard marvelous things about you, as Mr. Rubel just indicated. What I would add, and I say this somewhat in jest, but also I'm pretty serious. This council takes code enforcement very seriously. There's some of us who are very passionate about it. I believe that it has a direct bearing on our citizens' quality of life, and that's why it was so important to reestablish an independent code officer in recent years. So we welcome you aboard. We look forward to working with you, and please use City Council as a resource when you deem it appropriate.
Thank you, Mayor. Very
good. Any questions for our new code enforcement officer? Well, we welcome you here, Gary. Thank you for attending this evening. Okay, moving on, we come to the first citizen comment on agenda items under the Open Meetings Act. Any citizen may come forward at this time and make a question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess. My comments are regarding the EDC budget, TIFA budget, and LIFA 1 and 2. I have said for the last couple of years that there appears to be vacancies when they have the meeting. There were 5 members absent on the LIFA and 1 and 2. They have approximately a $700,000 budget. I guess I'm disappointed. I think they meet maybe 3 or 4 times a year at the most. Why we cannot have the members that have been selected to serve are not serving. The other comment as far as for the closing of the street for graduation party, I would hope, I guess my question is, are they going to break down at 8 p.m. and clear the street? And I also agree with the chief and DPW as far as the tent being put on the street, that they would prefer it not be on the street in their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there additional comments on agenda items? Yep, if you have a comment on the agenda, Matthew, you're welcome to speak now.
Matthew Rockwell. I am very disappointed in hearing that we are going to have a graduation party on the streets. I read that in the newspaper, and if these kids want to have their graduation, let them have it at home or let them have it in a ballroom, because these kids do not need to close down our streets here in town. It's very disappointing to me that you guys on City Council want to have it. We never had it when I was in high school, so I think it's very disappointing to let City Council go through with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items? No, then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion. Please note we already have removed C-17-92, so the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Move to approve as amended.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Tar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Seo. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to public hearing. This is business item 17-96, General Appropriation Act for FY18. It's our city budget. The first motion I'll entertain is a motion to open the public hearing at 7:39 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Seo to open the public hearing at 7:39. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Again, we'll entertain public comment on the proposed budget for fiscal year 18. And like our previous public comment period, we will limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue?
Move to close.
Move to close by Councilwoman Dillon at, we'll say that's 7:40. And was that seconded by Councilwoman McClellan?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. I apologize that I didn't do that earlier. Now the chair will entertain a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 31st, 2017 memo from Deputy Treasurer McDonough regarding the General Appropriations Act of FY18 and to approve or not to approve and adopt or not to adopt the resolution as submitted adopting the General Appropriations Act budget for fiscal year 2017-2018, providing for a general operating millage of 14.1174 mils, including the funding required for fire protection, the 2001 street debt millage of 0.119 mils, the 2004 street debt millage of 0.4007 mils, and the refuge tax millage levy at 1.6420 mils, for a total levy of 16.28, which is unchanged from fiscal year 2016-2017.
Move to acknowledge receipt and adopt.
I'll let the mover go to Councilman Gearbaugh and the second go to Councilman Seal. Ms. McDonough is not present this evening. Ms. Bennett, do you care to make any comment at this time? We welcome you to the podium.
Just for the those listening, the City Council has been meeting on this budget. We have not raised any of the rates, and we have submitted again a balanced budget for this year based on last year's rate with a will actually be in the black by $5,000 for this fiscal year. A lot of that is due to very active department heads trying to do the best they can and cutting their expenditures and working very diligently with state to try to get our revenues for all the personal property and all of that in line. I'd also like to just state for the record that this budget is based on all actual, nothing pending. This is all concrete funds that we have known expenditures, we have known receipts for. We do have some pending sales transactions that are not reflected in this budget, so there could possibly stand to be some additional proceeds, but when we bring those amendments to you, I already have staff in line with some additional expenses as well of things that we deferred, knowing that we would wait until those revenues, proceeds were actually received.
Very good. Are there questions or comments for our city treasurer? Mr. Seal.
I guess I just want to state again, as I have previously, several of the work sessions, that having worked through this process myself as a staff member for a number of years in the past, I know what a laborious process it is. I know what kind of work goes into the process, and I very much appreciate the fact as a taxpayer that you've brought us a balanced budget and that you have not raised our taxes. So good work to everybody on city staff. Thank you.
Thank you. We have great people working to do that.
Indeed you do. Additional questions or comments for Ms. Bennett? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
Just real quick, and this may be putting you on the spot. The two road millages, are they 20-year millages? Or the 2001 and 2004, when will they be up?
Yes, they are 20-year millages.
Okay. Because I know that's one of our concerns in our town, and hopefully we'll be able to renew those in the coming years so that we won't have to raise the taxes, but at least that would be something to put forward to that. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments for Ms. Bennett? Well, let me echo some of the sentiments that were shared by my council colleague, Mr. Seal. Needless to say, everyone at this day has put a lot of time and effort into this issue, and I appreciate your attention and your understanding that this responsibility, the responsibility of crafting and adopting a budget, is one of our most paramount responsibilities. But I do want to commend staff because they carry most of the water on this, and I'm particularly impressed by Ms. Bennett and Ms. McDonough and their team for bringing us a balanced budget. We were already in the black by the time we reviewed, I believe, the second draft of the proposed fiscal year budget for fiscal year 18. So again, thank you for your efforts and your attention to detail. As I've said in the past, the general operating budget reflects our values and priorities, and I think invests in critical areas like public safety and general government, things that have a direct impact on our citizens' quality of life. But I will note for the record, as Councilmember Gearbaugh just alluded to, our revenue, we do not have a reliable revenue stream to meet our infrastructure needs. So that is something that we will continue to discuss, debate, and deliberate in the coming years. But I think we can all agree that investing in our infrastructure and making sure our sidewalks, our roads, our water and sewer systems are taken care of is absolutely critical. So you will be hearing more from us on that subject. But the good news is we have a balanced budget. We're putting a little bit of money into our reserve. And again, we invest in critical areas that our citizens value most. So again, kudos to staff. You did an excellent job, and we appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further, it's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO, to acknowledge receipt and to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Now we'll entertain the item that was removed from the consent agenda. It's item C-17-92. It's a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 10th, 2017 memo from Deputy Treasurer McDonough regarding the FY18 EDC budget, and to approve and adopt the FY EDC budget as submitted.
Move to approve and adopt.
Moved by Gearbox to approve and adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Mr. Gearbox, I believe you had a question, sir.
Yeah, I think the revised memo basically answered that. Part of it was the question about the library, not the library, sorry, the farmer's market. During the EDC discussions, we knew that there was a concern about how the numbers were being added up, and they've been revised. So in this new document we received tonight is corrected. So my concern had been that based on revenues in the past year and what was proposed, we might have a concern that we may not meet those goals of revenue, and I had a concern that the expenses would then become a liability of the city. Because the EDC right now no longer has funds coming into it from the TIFA, it is a direct hit onto the general fund budget. And my other concern was really, as we look into this into the future, those are expenditures that are occurring on here that potentially would mean a draw on the general funds, so that as we go forward, not only is Main Street being supported directly from general funds, but so is Spark and some other costs that potentially will be something that we have to consider every year, whether or not we're going to continue those. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbox. Staff care to respond? No, unless there's questions. Okay. Are there any questions as a follow-up to Mr. Gearbox's opinions? I don't disagree. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Gearbox. No? Okay. If there's no discussion, then we'll entertain Mr. Gearbox's motion, which was he moved to approve and adopt the FY18 EDC budget as submitted, and that was seconded by Tahar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 17-95. This is application for use of public ways. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the June 1st, 2017 email from Fire Chief Heft, the June 1st, 2017 email from Police Chief Rennick, and the May 30th, 2017 letter and application for use of public ways from Elena and David Hess, and to approve or not to approve the request by Elena and David Hess to close a portion of Woodland Drive on Sunday, June 18th, 2017, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., with the understanding that the applicant will be responsible for placing and removing the barricades for the event, and to approve or not to approve a 20 by 13 tent to be placed on the portion of Woodland Drive on Sunday, June 18th, 2017, from 12 until 8 p.m., with the understanding that the applicant will be responsible for placing and removing the tent. It was a mouthful.
Move to acknowledge receipt of the memo.
Okay, we'll start by acknowledging receipt of the memo that was moved by Gearbox. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Who from staff would like to take the lead on this? Do you want to comment before we entertain the petitioner? We
Yes.
welcome you here this evening.
Yes, thank you for having us.
I received the application, and it was via a block party application. And we do not actually have anything that allows a public road to be closed besides a community event or a block party. And this really isn't a block party, but I didn't have any other form of applications to even ask this. So I brought this to council, and I don't know if this is something you want to move forward with, or something we need to create, or something that you don't want to create, but I felt that bringing it here was the best way to move forward. So I did give this application out, and I am bringing this forward, but I'm not sure if this is the best way of doing it. The police chief and the fire chief have both suggested that the tent not be placed on the road because it would impede fire vehicles or emergency vehicles from getting through. So
May I make a comment?
Mrs. Hess, please.
Great. So I was pretty ignorant about how big a tent is and how you can't move it. So when I originally thought we could put it there and bring it back off, I was incorrect. So we can't move it. So I'm actually retracting the tent off the request into the street. But I am hoping to still put a couple barricades in front of my house and my neighbor's house. We're in the very far back of Woodland Drive, and there's ways to get to all of the properties with the barricades there, and they've all signed off on it. I was not aware that there was, block party versus, I just tried to follow whatever protocol that was in front of us. Our property's pretty small, and our backyard's not big enough, so that's why I was hoping to access the street for games for the kids. I do want to say there's no alcohol at this graduation party, and we'll, place and remove anything that's needed, just trying to make it all work.
Mrs. S., we appreciate your time this evening. So if I understand you correctly, you would be comfortable, of course, at this moment, we're just considering a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memos.
Sure.
But on the subsequent motion, that motion would end with the word event, and we would not entertain beginning with the word and ending with tent. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
if I'm reading that quickly, fast and accurately.
So the tent is no longer on the table?
Exactly.
Okay, very good.
Or in the street.
More appropriately. Thank you. Are there questions for either the petitioner or for city staff? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
So you're just going to basically have, like we've normally done for a block party, you'd maybe have it blocked out in front for some tables or seats or something like that?
I don't even know if I'll put tables and seats out there right now after everything I've just heard tonight. But we were thinking about putting, the toss, cornhole and, stuff so the kids have a chance to play and chalk up the thing. We do have, I should say this, a food truck that will be parked there because that's turned out to be a great way for us to do this. But I assume since that's movable, that's not an issue. But I want to be completely transparent.
Very good. Appreciate that. Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
No, that's all.
Any additional questions for staff or for the applicant? No? Very good. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Is there any discussion then on the motion moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt? Mr. Hart.
Yes, this is a comment more for us. I believe that we have outstanding on our list of things that we might come back to consider at some point, review of the block party rules and regulations just citywide. That obviously doesn't apply in this case, but seeing this reminded me that perhaps we might want to revisit that at some point sooner rather than later.
Thank you for bringing that up. So actually there will be then two issues, if I understand correctly. One would be what was discussed now probably 1.5 to 2 years ago, which is allowing staff to sign off on the block parties. And then second, it's clear to me, and this is sort of a minor thing really, that we probably need a separate form to more accurately reflect what the petitioner is after this evening.
Right,
which is
yes.
not necessarily a block party. She's having a private function and wants to utilize a portion of the public street.
Right, exactly. It seems like
It's a little bit of semantics, but...
Well, but it does bring up another aspect of the whole issue.
Right, so I agree with you. We will, I'll work with the clerk and we'll find a time to discuss that issue in the very near future. Are there any other additional comments? Mr. Seal?
Yes. Ms. Hess, may I call you
Please.
back up, please? The food truck, would that be parked at the curb?
Yes.
And any water lines or power lines would not run
No,
across the street?
they're self-contained.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
that's a good
As long as
question.
it's parked at the curb.
Yeah, it's at the curb. It's like your normal food truck, whatever that may look like to you guys. It's nothing
Very good.
unusual. I did have actually one other thing to ask, and if this is inappropriate, please let me know.
Please.
Along the side, and I have a graphic that I gave to Ms. Royal at one point, there's a lot of no parking signs by the wilderness portion of the road, and I would be happy to, if approved, make it able to be parking, like bag it if necessary, and for the event and take it off, just so I have some opportunity to put cars there where no one lives, rather than people, as usual, would go down the road. So I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there potentially.
Generally, how we approach that
Yeah.
is there would be a formal request that would be reviewed by staff and then come back to us. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Chief Rennick. Did you hear what Mrs. Hess just articulated? Would you have any problem with that?
I certainly would have to be looked at to see if fact, parking
Okay.
cars there would be okay. In case, once again, it's all for emergency.
Right,
Right.
right.
Right, absolutely. Okay,
So,
I just want to clarify.
At least, I can't speak for council, but my comfort level, in all candor, would be to refer that to him, let his
Okay.
department take a look at it, and then make a subsequent recommendation.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I step away now, or? we good?
Unless there are additional questions. There is, so hang tight. Ms.
Just
Dillon?
very
problem.
quickly, I'm assuming your neighbors are not going to have an issue with not having a tent, because what they've signed off on is having a tent there.
I think they
So-
actually signed off on just having it blocked.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't- the tent wasn't necessarily a part of the equation, you
Okay.
know, so,
okay. Just want to make sure.
yeah. And the access points to everyone, you can, because of, I don't know if you're looking at a graphic,
Yeah.
Ms. Dillon, or not, you can get to almost everyone's house still, because I'm at the very end. so-
Right.
A dead end, yeah, so.
Anything else, Ms. Dillon?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Seal, you had something else?
Yes, one more. Chief Rennick, may we bother you, please? I know initially you and Chief Heft recommended against the tent. Does blocking of the road without the tent make a difference from a public safety standpoint and your point of view?
Well, the barricades can be moved relatively easily in case of an emergency, where the tent, as she said, could not be moved.
Right.
And that was our concern, so we're glad that she's taken that on.
Okay.
As far as barricades, I don't know that it would be any different than a block party. If there was an emergency, they could move the blockades and get in.
Okay. So that eliminates your public safety concern then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions?
I have just one more.
Please.
And this would be for staff. She's asking from 12 to 8. Is that a normal time range that we, like, what is our normal allotment for block parties?
Well, the DPW will deliver the blockades on Friday, and then she will be responsible for setting them out and taking them down, and then on Monday, they will go back and pick them up.
But I'm just saying that the amount of time that the road is being closed, do we
Yes.
normally allow for an 8-hour span?
Yes.
Okay. As long as it's customary, that's fine. Thank you.
Additional questions? I believe you can sit down now.
Thank you so much, I appreciate your time.
Any subsequent discussion on the motion to acknowledge receipt? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Again, I would note that beginning with the word and ending with removing the tent has been eliminated as a request, so there's no reason to entertain that. So at this time, the chair would be willing to accept a motion to either approve or not to approve the request.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearboss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Seo. Any additional discussion? And we'll proceed to vote.
Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess I wanted to raise, I'm not sure I have a strong opinion at this time, but closing a street for a block party, which is a public event, is one thing, and closing a street for a private party seems to be another. So I have some mixed feelings about that, and I'm not sure if that stood out to any of my peers.
Well, it did to me, Councilwoman, and that's one of the reasons why when Mayor Pro Tem Tahar indicated that block parties are on our list of items pending, I think that when we bring that up, and hopefully we bring it up, hopefully it's brought up in the not-too-distant future, there are two things to discuss. One is, a few years ago, we talked about staff being able to sign off and approve the block parties without them coming to council. We need additional discussion and debate on that. But based on what has been verbalized this evening by Clerk Royal, we really don't have an appropriate form in-house to accommodate Mrs. Hess's request for a private party, a private function to close down a section of street. So in the absence of an appropriate form, Ms. Royal did what I think was appropriate and logical. She utilized the existing form for the block party. So I think there are two issues that need to be deliberated when this issue comes up again.
And I guess I have a question about is there a fee for moving the blockades for our city workers? Is that fee covered by the person requesting the permit? Is their time being paid for? Or is that coming out of our budget?
Just the block party fee.
There's not a block.
I think so. Yes, there's no fee. Essentially what DPW does is Ms. Royal mentioned is they do certainly take time, but it's not a lot of time, but they deliver the barricades, then the applicants, the folks using for the block party, or in this case, the graduation party, they set them up, take them down, put them, when they're done with them, they, put them on the curb, and then the next business day, DPW would come and remove them. But again, they're trying to encourage the block party, and I get it, I'm not trying to get into that discussion, but trying to encourage neighbors to, grow in relationships with each other and spend time, that type of thing. So that's typically when since there's not a significant amount of time and resources necessary to drop off some barricades, right, and then to go pick them up a couple days later. Wanted to encourage that typically you see either a minimal fee or no fee associated with that.
Anything else, Ms. Mitchell? No?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Mr. Gearbox.
And the reason why I approved this was because also on here, the applicant has had their neighbors sign off on it, which when it's that type of thing, it's almost like a block party. Had they not had this type of thing, I wouldn't have, but if the neighbors are supporting it, it's kind of it's almost the same type of thing.
It is. As I indicated earlier, it's sort of semantics, but I think it should be discussed and looked at. Ms. Tahar?
Yes, just another comment on that same thread. It may be semantics, but I think when we come back to this discussion, we need to think carefully about what kind of parties are covered. And this is a private party. It's a graduation party. So I wouldn't want to necessarily set a precedent that this automatically would be, I think it just needs careful consideration.
Yep, indeed.
But I don't think approving this one case would cause a problem in that regard.
No, I agree. I think it's pretty cut and dry and reasonable from my point of view. Mrs. McClellan?
Yeah, I was curious, and this may go to the other conversation, but since we're talking about it now, I figure I'd bring it up. But what are the policies for closing the street, like say when South Springs had to close to fix the water line to the street, that kind of stuff? I mean, to me, that's a private entity, so I don't know if it's related. Again, this may be a conversation for later on in this, just when we start talking about policy, but.
Sure, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Just very briefly, and that's a little bit different scenario, party versus doing business, putting in utilities and that type of thing. So it is, I would say that is, I understand what you're saying, but I would say that it is a kind of an apples and oranges comparison, because that's more of a necessity for doing business and putting in utilities.
Mr. Seal?
Just one last thing. I assume that you're the graduate. I hope that our machinations haven't caused you too much heartburn this evening.
All right, thank you for the discussion. If there's nothing further, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to approve the modified motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries. We move on to new business item 17-97. This is community event application, Oakwood Cemetery Tours. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the application for community events by Ginger Winter on behalf of the Saline Rotary for Oakwood Cemetery Tours, and to acknowledge receipt of the May 19th, 2017 email from Police Chief Rennick, the May 31st, 2017 email from Fire Chief Heft, and the June 1st, 2017 email from DPW Director Fordyce, and to approve the request by Saline Rotary to conduct Oakwood Cemetery walking tours on Saturday, September 30th, 2017. The rain date is October 1st, 2017, from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and to waive or not to waive any associated fees.
Move to acknowledge, to approve, and not waive.
Second.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Har. And Mr. Gearball, you're the second?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So we have a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt, to acknowledge, approve, and not to waive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, that's correct, Mr. Gearball?
Yes.
All right. Clerk Royal, do you want to comment on this first before we hear from the applicant?
This was done last year for the first time, and it had a really good turnout, so they're trying it again this year. And the fees weren't waived last year, and they paid, and there was no problems, and it was really successful. So
Excellent. Ginger, we welcome you here this evening, and we would be happy to hear any comments or thoughts you're willing to share with us.
Well, I think it was a very successful event last year. We're looking forward to doing another one. We have Orange Risden, William Davenport, many interesting people from the history of Saline that we're going to be sharing. We're excited. We think it's easier this year than last year. We have parking at Annie's Daycare and street parking, so I don't think there's too much problem with the event. We're excited to do it, and we hope we're adding to the history of Saline by sharing it with the residents.
Very good. Thank you, Ginger. Are there questions for the applicant? Ms. Tahar, please.
I have a comment. I'm very much in favor of this event. I attended it last year. It was great fun, really interesting, very informative, and I look forward to having it happen again. I unfortunately may not be in town on that given day, too much to my regret, but I think it was a great event, a great success, and I hope it goes well again this year.
And I think the Rotarians are becoming better and better actors.
No, it's a great event, and it's things like this that really enrich the community. Are there additional questions for the applicant? Ms. McClellan?
Yeah, again, I think fabulous. I didn't get to go last year, but I was really disappointed I didn't get to go because it looked like so much fun. Did you have any issue, or are we foreseeing any issues with the Fairdine property and parking situation and construction, that kind of thing? Or just want to make sure that you have not any issues with that?
We will have a couple of Rotarians helping people across Monroe. We also have a couple people that will help going up a little hill. We're trying to see and provide for as many challenges that we foresee, but last year we didn't have a problem, and I don't foresee one for this year.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Additional questions for the applicant? Ginger, thank you very much. We appreciate your attendance this
You're
evening.
welcome.
Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? Then the chair will call for the vote. It's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by Gearbaugh, to acknowledge, approve, and not to waive. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 17-100. This is well number 4, improvements. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 31st, 2017 memo from wastewater treatment superintendent Skull, and to approve or not to approve the bid from Goyette Mechanical for repair work for transmission line for well number 4 in an amount not to exceed $19,688.
To acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Seo. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that
Mitchell?
by Mitchell? Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Skull, the floor is yours, and I hope I pronounced the name of the company correctly. Excellent.
Yes, this request is to, for the money to repair the transmission line that connects number 4 well to the water treatment plant. It's separated under the footings of the well house. And number 4 is our largest well, and it's been offline since October. We needed time for the site to dry out. We needed time to get quotes. The first quotes came in twice as high, so we had to come up with an alternative method of repairing the line. And this, I think, is going to work out well, and it's about half the price.
Excellent. There are questions for Mr. Skull. Ms. Dillon?
Just quickly, you had budgeted $30,000 for it. Are there other repairs that need to be done that's going to eat up that extra 10, or did the numbers come in lower than anticipated?
Well, actually, the $30,000 is remaining from, is the money remaining in the budget from working
Right.
on the previous well earlier. And I budget money in the CIP budget every year for wells.
Okay.
So we're covered.
Okay. So is this coming out of 17's budget? Is that what you're?
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully. It depends on, I mean, the main is nothing special. It's just 12-inch ductile iron. It's not that big of a deal, but scheduling the repair work got postponed a little bit, so hopefully it'll be done by then.
Okay.
Anything further, Ms. Dillon?
No, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, do you know what caused the separation? And
I believe, we don't really know. I mean, what causes a main to break at any particular time? I think it was a pressure issue The pressure on the raw water line is much higher than on the standard water mains that run down the street. And we had a couple of wells on that same line running at the same time. And I believe the pressure just was too much.
So did we enhance anything, what we're putting in now, or just?
We will when we repair it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions for Mr. Scull? Bob, thank you very much. Subsequent discussion on the motion? No, then we'll call for the vote. It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Councilwoman Mitchell to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-90. This is 600 North Maple Street Sales Agreement Extension. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 31st, 2017 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve the request by 600 North Maple LLC for a 90-day extension on the purchase agreement of the property at 600 North Maple.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearbaugh, seconded by McClellan. Mr. Campbell, do you care to make any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, the process continues to move forward. You all may recall that this particular project is pretty detailed, and it's also a planned unit development, a PUD, so there's additional steps that, and so Council not too long ago approved their preliminary site plan after recommendation from the Planning Commission, and so the next step would be the final site plan, which they actually just turned in this afternoon, and so staff is beginning to get that reviewed, and then that would go before Planning Commission, again with a recommendation forthcoming to Council to consider one way or the other. And then I think the last step is actually, but that can be done afterwards, is a condominium agreement. But they are continuing to move forward, and that's kind of where it's at.
Let me add something to Mr. Campbell's comments, and Mr. Gearbaugh, I believe, can back me up on this as my council colleague on the Planning Commission. As was noted at a previous meeting, the Planning Commission took a significant amount of time to consider the PUD for this property. One, because of the complexity and because it's multidimensional, but two, and probably more importantly, because it was our first PUD. So part of the delay was caused by the City of Saline and the Planning Commission specifically, but I'll note that I have absolutely no regrets about that approach because I think being very thoughtful and strategic was in the community's best interest. So I've noted on numerous occasions that this particular development and project is really cutting edge and will prove beneficial to the community. I'm very much in support of the motion and excited to hear that they turned in their final site plan just today, and I look forward to reviewing that with my colleagues on the Planning Commission in the very near future. Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have a comment, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to say this developer has been very cooperative with the city, has looked forward, worked with us greatly, is working towards us paying the price for our property that we're buying and how we're improving upon it. And I think this has been a great approach to which we would hope that all our developers work with us. My one question is, you mentioned in your memo about American Tower. Please tell me that that's almost in stone, because I don't want that to be the last thing holding us up.
Yeah, well, I can't make promises, of course, but yeah, I mean, they approved that language before we brought it to council. We will be following up this week. I know there was a couple housekeeping items that they wanted from the developer in reference to the Phase 2 and BEA, the environmental assessments that they had done. And so they received that, and they had sent their attorney, had sent an email response saying that they were going to be getting it signed. And it just, apparently American Tower, the wheels work extremely slow apparently there, so, but we will be getting it signed and bringing it forward. So
and our last communication with them was when?
Via the developer, probably 2 weeks ago.
Okay. I just want to make sure we keep the pressure on that.
Absolutely.
This is not something we need to hold up any longer.
Yep, I agree.
Additional questions for Mr. Campbell, or for anyone on city staff for that matter? Any subsequent discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by McClellan to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-217. This is extension of purchase agreement for Lot 18A of Sauk Trail Business Park. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 31st, 2017 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve the request by Sauk Trail Court Properties LLC to approve addendum number 2 to the real estate purchase and development agreement as presented.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Seo. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Mitchell. Mr. Campbell, do you want to comment on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And there are representatives I think I saw come in the back, Mr. Junga, Mr. Kuykendall, for the hotel slash hardware development, and they have requested a 90-day extension as for due diligence and to complete that and to move forward. So you have Mr. Junga's letter before you. If you had any questions for Mr. Junga, I'm sure he'd be happy to speak to that.
Okay. Any questions for staff or for the applicant? Ms. Dillon?
Can you address, Mr. Campbell, the conveyance issue?
Sure. Essentially, you may recall that the purchase agreement is actually with between the city and Mr. Junga, and his primary project is the hardware store. And by the way, if I'm misstepping here, please, Mr. Junga, Mr. Kuykendall, please let me know. But the hotel is slated to be constructed first, and so and because of the financing mechanisms and such, the hotel folks, the developer, will require to own that, at least that portion of the property for the hotel to go forward. And so this, but Mr. Smith, Scott Smith, city attorney, included in this language a means to essentially just more efficient, and so there wouldn't have to be double transfers, if you will, and it would also be economically potentially a little bit cheaper, some cost savings for the developer to not have to go through the two closings, if you will. That's my understanding.
Okay, so now the hotel will be the property owner, the entire property? Or are you saying just the hotel property? Are we segmenting this piece of property?
I'll let Mr.
The hotel will buy the property from the Sauk Trail LLC, which is Jim Junga's company at that moment.
At the moment that we close,
yeah,
the property will be assigned to the hotel property that they're going to develop.
The entire property?
No, the 4 acres that the hotel requires.
Okay, so we've then essentially split this property, and we'll have 2 owners? Is that?
Well, yeah, you'd have.
Yeah, the hotel entity will own the
Will
4
own
acres.
4 acres.
As a separate entity that is created that will purchase the property at that point. So this is intended to prevent 2 closings on that. So then the remaining parcel will be for the hardware store.
Okay. And this is what our council has advised?
Correct. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Junga, but I think that was what you had wanted to do once we determined, and this is a way to, since this is an opportunity to amend the purchase agreement for the extension, this would be an opportunity to amend it by allowing this to go forward.
No, that's correct. And it's fairly routine protocol for this type of purchase.
Okay. I understand it's convenient for the developer. Is it in the city's best interest?
Yeah, it's neither, I mean, it just is. I mean, it's fairly benign, really, I mean, from the city's perspective.
Okay.
It's again, just more efficient procedurally.
Okay. And then my second question is, this additional 90 days, where is that putting the hotel project as a time frame of completion?
Well, if we can have this additional time, we can get the total funding together and get the whole project together probably within the next 60 days. And that'll get us in the ground sometime this fall after we go through the approvals, the other approvals with the Planning Commission. That's our intention.
Okay. Because that was, so then are you still looking at a fall opening?
it would be probably no later than early next fall is our hope. We had looked at hopefully getting open by early summer originally, so it's probably going to be late summer, early fall of next year.
Okay. Do we feel like we have to do 90 days, Mr. Campbell? I mean, is that standard? I mean, I just feel like this is just dragging on and on and on. And I mean, I just sort of feel like if we could do even 60 days, it'll just move things along. Because if for some reason this project doesn't come to fruition, we've sat now for a year on this property that it's not been marketed elsewhere.
Well, what I would say to that is that's been pretty standard for the other city-owned properties. The parcels like 207 Monroe had at least 2, if not 3, 90-day extensions. 600 Maple has had, I think this is number 3 or number 4, 90-day extensions. So this would be this is their first request for any kind of an extension.
Okay.
If I could just make a couple of comments.
Sure.
It was just 90 days ago that we first put our investment offering and information package officially on the street. So it was just a 90-day period. That was well into the total due diligence period, but that prior to that, we were working on building design, architectural work, working with the brand, and all of those things. It also took some time legally to get our investment offering put together. So it was just 90 days ago that we put that officially out on the streets, and we gained very gained momentum, very good momentum in raising funds and moving the project forward. And we continue to move the project forward. The process of having the building approved for three stories versus something less than that took a little time. Kind of, our momentum slowed down a little bit. As soon as that was approved, we had some potential investors move to committed investors. And since then, we've really gained a lot of momentum, and we're moving forward very, very well on this. We are about, I'd say we're about 35 yards from the goal line now, and we just need to continue to move forward and get there. So we've done very well. We've made some great progress on the whole project, all aspects of the project. It's not an easy thing to do to put a big dollar amount like this together. We have a lender lined up, just contingent upon the equity raise, and we're about 60% of our equity raise. So we're looking really good. We lost some momentum there for a few weeks, and you're asking people to put up this kind of money. They have concerns when their concerns are come up that they were not considering. So we appreciate the council's consideration and approval, the planning commission's approval of the 3-story building. That really was a very positive step in getting us moving forward again. So appreciate that, and appreciate the consideration for this extension tonight.
Thank you. I just have one last question.
Please.
And it is probably to city staff or to the applicants. Is the purchase price for which the hotel is going to be conveying, are you making a profit off of this?
Anything that I make off this is being put into the hotel. So I will make no profit on it. It'll be strictly investment into the hotel.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Additional questions? Any subsequent discussion? That was easy enough, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we'll call for the vote. It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Mitchell, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor of approving the extension signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, the motion carries. We move on to new business item 17-98. This is establishment of a police advisory board work group. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 31st, 2017 memo from Mayor Marl, and to approve or not to approve Mayor Marl's recommendation to establish a police advisory board work group, and to approve or not to approve the appointments as outlined in the memo.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and approve.
Thank you, Mr. CO. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Mitchell. Well, briefly, my friends, I think that my memo of May 31st said what needs to be said, and I do want to thank Mr. Campbell for his thoughts on the memo, as well as our proofreader extraordinaire, Councilwoman Tahar, coming in to take a look at it as well. I would note, and I apologize that I did not mention this at the beginning of the meeting, but there is a copy on the dais that is revised slightly. I used the same template that I had used in the past. And so the document that went out with your packets reads on the bottom of the front page, Saline Community Foundation Work Group, and obviously it needs to read Police Advisory Board Work Group. I also want to thank Councilmember Seo for agreeing to chair the group. I think the group came together nicely. I think there's really there's some different perspectives and a different take on these type of issues that I think will prove beneficial. The only thing I would note is that this, the creation of this work group in no way prohibits Mr. Seo and or his colleagues on the Saline Police Advisory Board work group from engaging other members of the public to solicit their input and opinion. So just want to make that clear for the record. And at this time, I'm happy to entertain any questions, comments you may have. No questions? Questions, Mr. Gearbox?
No, I think from my perspective, I'm looking at this, there isn't really any staff support, where my concern last time was trying to keep our staff focused on work projects and so forth. My one aspect of this, I think we'll have something come back to us to make a decision whether or not a police advisory board will be useful for us or whatever. But I think we have some other issues that I'm not sure if this advisory board will help deal with that in terms of actual overall operations, or if it's just going to be more something about how it would work with the community outreach and those type of things to make our police force more approachable, I think is what I would like to see come out of a task force.
Well, let me state for the record, I am under no illusion that if it is the recommendation of this work group to establish a police advisory board with certain responsibilities, and that concept is adopted by City Council, it is certainly not going to resolve and rectify every issue that may exist within the police department. However, I'll also note for the record that we have a pretty exceptional police department with some really dedicated men and women who give of themselves selflessly every day to serve our community. But also, as it's noted in the memo, from the limited research that I've done, is as you look at the state of Michigan and then as you expand your search and look more broadly at the region, there are a litany of communities that have police advisory boards with very different structures and focuses. And so that is the main task of this group, is to research those and to identify if there's one that may be beneficial to Saline. Additional comments or questions? Mrs. Tahar, please.
Yes, just a comment. I would say I would look forward to seeing the results of that research, since I have done no such research myself, so it would be very useful, I think, to have that information. And I would also just, going back to the review of the police department that we had, that one of the comments was the department was very well thought of by the community. So I think, you know, anything that this group might recommend that would enhance the already good relationships between the police department and the community would be welcome.
Absolutely. Additional questions or comments, Ms. Dillon?
I would like to see the work group expanded to be a little bit more diversified. It is very heavy in law enforcement currently. If it's community-based, we really only have one community member on it right now. So I would like to see that. Also consider minorities and such as members.
Additional comments, questions? No subsequent discussion, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Seo, seconded by Mitchell, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 17-99. This is request to borrow items from the Brecken display case. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 15th, 2017 letter from Catherine Downey on behalf of the Saline Celtic Festival Executive Committee, and the May 8th, 2017 email from Jim Roth, president of the Saline Brecken Friendship Guild, and to approve or not to approve the request to borrow specific items from the Brecken display case at City Hall to display at the Saline District Library from Monday, June 5th through Monday, July 17th, 2017.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
And I'll let Tahar be the mover on that. And was that Councilwoman McClellan?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So that was moved to acknowledge and to approve. Clerk Royal, do you want to comment?
You have what I received. It was basically a request to use the items, and so I reached out to Jim Roth, and he was approved it. So I just wanted to get council's approval to go forward. What we will do is we will take a picture of the display case because there was a lot of effort put into making the display case the way it is right now, so that when the items come back, we can place them back where they were.
Are there any questions for Clerk Royal? Mr. Roth, did you care to make any comments? Mr. Peters?
I'm going to make no comments, but
Mr. Peters?
Peters would like to.
Well, only if you have some questions. Of course, the Celtic Festival is a direct result of our sister city relationship with Brecon. And I think that the library does a nice job with its displays and changing them out. And I think we would give a whole new group of people to, this is a really nice collection, to see this collection. When everybody comes to City Hall, but a lot of people go to the library. So it'd be a nice opportunity to show off our display.
Any questions for Mr. Peters? Okay, it's been properly moved by Terhar, seconded by McClelland, to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. We move now to item 17-91, metal banding around the Recreation Center roof. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 25, 2017 memo from Parks and Recreation Director Scruggs, and to approve or not approve the color deep blue sea for the metal banding around the rec center roof.
Move to acknowledge.
Second.
Move to acknowledge receipt by Dillon, seconded by McClelland. Director Scruggs.
So this is deep blue sea.
That was going to be my question. That was going to be my question. Which one was that? Because there was two blues.
Since the last meeting, we did a little bit of informal surveying amongst staff, rec center staff, and just kind of gave them here are the ones that you can choose from, which are the standard colors, and everyone came up with the same choice. Anonymously, I was made aware that one of our members who comes to the rec center pretty much 6 days a week is an interior designer, and I just happened to, say, can I pick your brain as a professional? Here are the colors to choose from, could you make us a recommendation? And I also, because she's inside quite a bit, she understands that our kind of theme, the flooring theme, is a blue type of theme on the inside. There's light blue, dark blue, upstairs and downstairs. Some of our door framing is navy blue. So in any event, she came up with the same result that all of us came up with, which is this deep blue sea. Also, driving around town, I found a building in the Sauk Trail Industrial Park, and Todd, correct me, the name
PSMI.
PSMI. I mispronounced it the other day, and we got a good chuckle out of that. But they have the same color. I don't know exactly if it's deep blue sea, but it's very similar, very attractive. On a sunny day, it looks really nice and bright. On a gloomy day, it brings some brightness to the area. So that is the recommendation that we came up with. One thing I wanted to point out, and I didn't really think about that until after we got going, but the awning on the front of the building is a detached. It's not part of that metal banding. That was put on separately maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And that is not part of this project. We did get a quote, we just got it in today, to replace that. The structure is already there and it would stay. It would just be a matter of replacing the fabric, which is a very, it's like a rubberized tent type of fabric. And it would be a $5,300, $5,400 project to replace that and to have it match the blue of the metal banding. It's not necessary to do that right at this time. I would say we have probably another year or two of good life out of the The awning, the top portion, that's starting to get a little bit of wear. There's quite a bit of fading that has happened with that. Currently, there's no holes, but it will eventually wear and get some holes and would have to be replaced anyway.
Very good. I believe we have a motion on the floor just to acknowledge receipt. Are there questions for Director Scruggs? Ms. Dillon, and then Ms. Mitchell?
Do you know, will this color fade? Being a dark color, is it going to fade?
The metal?
The blue, yes, the blue metal.
I don't believe so. We've had the metal banding for 26 years now, and that has not faded.
And does it need maintenance? Does it have to be recolored at all? It just stays blue once it's there?
That's my
It's
understanding.
blue forever?
Mm.
Okay. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell?
Sure, thank you. Ms. Dillon was echoing some of my thoughts. I'm a fan of blue, and this is beautiful. Had you given any thought about the kind of solar implications of having a darker color? I don't know that it's necessarily really darker than what's on there now, but would it affect your heating and cooling costs? Because it is a little bit darker.
I haven't considered that, and I don't think it has any implications.
I'm thinking of like replacing a roof and having a dark roof
Right.
versus having a lighter roof.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what, and I really appreciate that you're looking at the awning and you know, it's a future item to be, we can still have the use and the regular wear out of it and then replace it as it becomes necessary. I appreciate that you're thinking of that.
Additional questions for Director Scruggs? Subsequent discussion on the motion to acknowledge receipt. Mr. Hart.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the fact that it was possible to consult with a professional, and the person's comments echo or answer questions that I had about the color choice. So I'm glad that could happen as quickly and easily as it did.
Additional discussion on the motion to acknowledge receipt. No, then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of acknowledging receipt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. How about a motion now to approve or not to approve the color deep blue sea for the metal banding around the rec center roof?
Move to approve.
Moved by Tahar, seconded by Councilman Seal. Any discussion? No discussion, then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the color signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is Commission, Committee, and Task Force reports from council members. Councilwoman McClellan.
Yeah, the Parks Commission met a couple weeks ago about our regular agenda, but also discussion on the People's Park parking situation, and we will be meeting, our next meeting is, remind me of the date,
June 20th.
June 20th, and we're going to meet at the park at 6 p.m. and
Correct.
kind of do a walking tour and a little bit of research down there. So anyone that's wanting to join us may join us at 6 o'clock, and then we're coming here afterward to have our regular agenda. Also, the Green Thumb Award nominations we're taking nominations starting June 1st. So looking to nominate your neighbors, businesses for lovely yards, pretty gardens.
We did get our first nomination today.
Yes.
Very excited to say that. I also wanted to mention, we had our first Parks Commission summer event on Friday, the Mutstodon, which is a prequel to the Mini Mastodon, which is a prequel to the Mastodon, which is coming up at the Celtic Festival. But we had 20 some odd dogs come down to the dog park at Mill Pond, and they ran with their human an obstacle race, and we timed them, and we did have participation awards. Everyone got a poop bag that they put on their leash. So, but it was a great event, and Parks Commission did a great job. And special thank you to Jim Peters. He came and brought a lot of additional obstacles for the course. So.
We also had the first movie in the park as well, right?
Yes, we did have our first movie in the park. Huge success Friday night. Moana, so we called it Moana in the Park. But we had probably 700-800 people down there. It was a huge turnout. Moana. It's a Disney movie. But tons and tons of people playing Gaga Ball. Diane Muckla, her group was one of the sponsors along with the Masons. And people were playing 9 Square in the Air, Gaga Ball, all sorts of things, playing on the play structure. It was great.
Excellent.
That's it from me.
Any other commission, committee, or task force reports? Ms. Tahar?
Yes, thank you. I have two. First, the anti-discrimination ordinance work group continues to work. We're making good progress. Our original memo of authorization and establishment indicated that we would have a text ready for City Council to review during the month of June. That will not happen. This has been a very busy season in many ways, on many fronts, but we are making good progress and have a plan for finalizing text and moving through review and approval process.
Excellent. Did you have another? You said you had two.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to mention the Environmental Commission is beginning to work on this year's Saline Be Green Awards, so there will be the opportunity soon to nominate neighbors and both residents and businesses for Saline Be Green Awards again.
Very good. Other commission, committee, or task force reports? Ms. Mitchell.
I had the pleasure of attending the Historic District Commission training this past week, and that was so we had someone come from the state of Michigan and give us an idea of the state standards, and our standards as a local community follow those state standards. So it was a really worthwhile training, and I appreciate that opportunity. And the Saline Foundation work group will be meeting for the first time this month. We already have a recording secretary that is not city staff. That comment was heard and understood during the last city council meeting. So we're looking to make sure that our staff time is used wisely and efficiently. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any additional commission, committee, or task force reports? How about reports or other announcements? Ms. McClellan, excuse me.
Just wanted to say that the student art banner competition banners will be going up soon. We are looking to do ribbon cutting for that event on the first night of the summer music series, so June 15th, I believe that is. So I just want to congratulate the students that submitted artwork for that, and looking forward to seeing those up in town, the first banners that are going to go up on the new poles. So.
Any other reports or announcements? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Rentschler Farm is open for the season. There's sheep, geese, and 2 pigs again, so we're hoping everyone can come out and meet them all.
Farmers market is tomorrow.
Oh, and the farmers market starts tomorrow night.
Yep, Tuesday.
At the farm, at the Rentschler Farm.
Just wanted to remind everybody that I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. My 6th annual senior conference will be from 8 a.m. to probably about 1:30, 2 o'clock at the Saline Senior Center, a week from this Friday, June 16th. Every Saline area senior is welcome to attend, and I'd be delighted if my council colleagues were able to join us, especially for lunch, which will take place over the noon hour. Registration is free, but you have to RSVP by calling the Senior Center. So please do so as soon as possible if you'd like to attend that event. If there are no additional reports or announcements, Mr. Scull, how about a brief update on the wastewater treatment plant?
I don't really have a whole lot to add. The Nova filters have been online and been functioning well and reliably for a change. The sludge haulers were in late last week, and they worked rather late, so that may have contributed to some additional odors in the neighborhood. We had 3 complaints. 1 Tetra Tech fielded, and the other 2 were down at the plant.
All in the vicinity of the plant?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Scull, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, one of the phone calls was mine because I got in the call.
Yeah, and I checked with the haulers because they were still there when I left, and they didn't finish hauling till 7:30 at night.
On a Saturday?
On Friday.
Friday.
Saturday they were in to clean up and remove their equipment.
Okay.
So the hatches may not have been closed. They had to work so late because the farmers are anxious to get in the fields. It was a wet spring and everybody was anxious to plant.
So now we do have evidence that the sludge hauling is causing the odor?
No, I mean, it might have been contributing to the odor, but the odors are gonna, until we get a new scrubber system.
Okay.
After the second round of study is completed. And we know which direction we're gonna move on that.
Yeah, it was definitely super strong that night.
What night was that, Mr. Gilmore?
Saturday, I was pretty sure.
Past Saturday?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the night we,
I thought you said Friday, but
it
maybe
might
I'm
have been
mistaken.
Friday, I'm trying to remember.
But just recently?
Yeah, it was Friday.
So I
Friday night,
also,
sorry.
I had
right, I was outside.
a citizen contact me about the issue, so I drove down there late that night and also made a phone call. And so I was probably the Tetra Tech person.
Maybe.
And so I just gave them some cross streets, driving the neighborhoods and spent some time
You know what
trying
day
to.
that was?
I can
It
tell
definitely was
you.
Friday, because I was
Okay,
outside
then
Saturday night.
it's not the same
wanted to
Tetra
make
Tech
sure it
one
was
then.
Oh, I see.
different.
Okay,
So
okay.
there must have been 4 then. That was
Special.
unworking.
Yeah.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, Mr. Gearback, your comment about the septic haulers, that I want to make sure we're on the same page, because the sludge haulers are what emptying out our storage tanks versus the septage, right, or that we
Oh,
receive.
that's the clarification.
I'm sorry,
Thank you. That's what I
I'm
mixed
sorry
up.
if I
So
confused
that's
you. Yeah,
why
the
I-
biosolids guys, NutriGrow, our new haulers were in last week to haul, and they worked rather late because of time constraints.
So
It's
we were
nothing to
hauling
do with
out
this.
our crap, not bringing stuff in.
Exactly.
Affirmative, yes, that's right.
Homegrown.
I kind of thought maybe that was, so I.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks for clarifying that, Mr. Gable.
Yeah, good job.
Anything else from Mr. Scull? Bob, we appreciate the update. Thank you for your attendance this evening. Mr. Fordyce, you're on deck for a quick update on the sidewalk program.
Thank you. The professional services RSP for a engineering firm to basically manage the construction phase of the project for us. That has been issued. Those proposals are due June 23rd. So we'll look at awarding that RFP at the July 3rd meeting. They will finalize the construction scope and issue the construction RFP so we can do our first round of this phase, the replacement phase of the sidewalk program in the late summer or early fall this year.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Fordyce? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Do you know, is that going to be by quadrant or all over the city?
That's part of the
or-
scope that I gave them. So they're going to take the existing survey data we have that was updated when the cutting program went on. So as they were cutting, they were basically resurveying everything at the same time. They're going to take that data and do some field inspections to determine which ones are city responsibility, which ones are private responsibilities, and then choose a geographic area based on the budget we have to fix our responsibilities, and then roll in all of the private stuff in that same zone.
Okay.
So it's, they're gonna, the idea is that they'll be able to look at the data and basically create the most efficient chunk of sidewalk repairs that we can get.
Because I'm debating right now, because I've got slabs I know I have to replace, but I would rather wait until that was coming through, so.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was identifying already.
That has not been identified, no.
Thanks.
Additional questions for Mr. Fordyce? Jeff, appreciate your work on this. Thanks for the update.
All right.
Mr. Campo, do you want to talk about employee severance pay? This was an issue that was brought up several weeks ago, and I believe you have a mock-up of the employment contract, that was distributed to each of my colleagues this evening.
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, not to get too far into it, but this was brought up, referenced the severance pay clause, and just wanted to make aware, and that the highlighted section, item 3B, the 90 days prior to July 1st. So, and I did, obviously, I reviewed this with our city legal counsel, and they concurred, essentially saying that in order to, whatever, if you want to make something different, reference to severance pay or anything on this item, you essentially can't do it unless you do it prior to 90 days. However, it does say that unless you don't want to, if you want to, you can make no changes and leave it as is for the preceding year, but there's not an ability to go and just reduce that or eliminate whatever council wants to do with that severance package for non-union folks this year, right? For this current, because that coming up on the 19th would be the proposed employment agreements changes to be updated for non-union folks at the next meeting, June 19th. So what I would suggest is that if that's the direction council wants to go, then at the first of the year in January, say like the second week in January, we could take that up, and then if council can make any changes at that point, so we'll be well within that 90-day window.
Questions from Mr. Campbell? Here's what I would suggest then. As Mr. Campbell stated, there's nothing that can be done that will go into effect for the employment contracts that will be approved at our next meeting in June per ordinance. I'm still in favor of reducing the current severance package for our non-union employees. I don't think my position has changed since this issue was first discussed when I was a member of council in 2009. But I do want everyone to be thoughtful about it. And so what I'd like to do, unless there are objections, is if you have questions, you'd like to just kind of ponder this for a bit, that would be appropriate and fine. And we'll probably add it to an agenda in the next month or so. Maybe next 2 months as a discussion item, see if there's consensus, and then we can make, if there's consensus to make some changes, we can do so, towards the end of the year or the first of 2018. Okay. Any questions? All right, then we'll move on to, I think Mr. Gearbaugh, you were the one who, you were the genesis for adding this to the agenda this evening. Fair Dane update. Did you want to, Mr. Campbell did provide I think a written update. He's obviously able to provide a verbal update, but did you have questions or concerns you wanted to bring forward at this time?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the public's aware and that there's been a hold on the project at this point. And my biggest concern, though, is the house that's on that property is not only an eyesore, but a potential public health concern. And I know the developer is promising to board it up, but that was never my intention when we sold this property, that house was going to come down as soon as it was going to be started. And my understanding now is that the developer feels that he's not going to put any more money in the property until he figures out how he's going to build the projects that are on there. So from my concern, I see a big problem with that house being there, and a bigger concern is that if this development doesn't go through, I don't want to see another 147 happening. So at this point, I want some assurance that we're not going to have to end up having a potential problem like we had year prior, and that the city gets stuck with having to clean up that property.
Sure. Certainly, I certainly concur with Mr. Gierbach's concerns as far as having things move along in a timely fashion. Certainly not making excuses for anybody. I mean, projects are what projects are, and sometimes they hit a snag, if you will, for causing certain delays. There is, as I stated in response to Mr. Gierbach's question, I think it was a week or two ago, referenced if there's anything to require them to bring that house down in a certain time frame, which there's not. I mean, they had to begin construction, which they have. I believe I think it was within 120 days maybe from the closing, which they have accomplished. And to Mr. Gierbach's point about the delay, which is those are modular units for those condos, and the manufacturer of those that had been around, I believe, for north of 50 years, which they've also been working with for about the last 2 years on this, specific to this project, is my understanding, that they, about a month maybe or so ago, they decided they're closing the doors. So they're scrambling, the Fair Dane folks are scrambling to find another supplier of those units. So, and I believe Mayor Morrow had a conversation. I traded some emails and forwarded that information on, but he has secured the house. He was allowing the fire department to do some training. They have also already taken there was some asbestos and some lead that needed to be mitigated out of that house before they were taken down, and that has been completed. They have resecured the structure, and again, waiting, I believe, I think the mayor has some more information on that, but certainly we want to see that house come down as soon as we can, but I believe that will happen once the project continues to move forward.
Yeah, I did have a direct conversation with the developer this afternoon after trading several phone calls. And Mr. Campbell is indeed correct. The hazardous material has been removed from the property, it has been boarded back up. Based on a verbal statement that he made to me on the phone, it is a commitment to expedite and to remove that home as soon as possible. Mr. Campbell is indeed correct. The vendor that he was looking to work with decided to close their doors after 50 years of business. So Mr. Damian Farrell is looking at additional vendors. In fact, he's made several trips out of state to look at possible partners. And is hoping to have some news to report in the not-too-distant future. I thought it was a very upbeat and positive phone call. Still very interested very interested in moving this project forward. And I told him that my opinion has been the same all along. I think it's a innovative and cutting-edge development. It diversifies our housing stock in a very strategic area of our community. We want him to be successful, so anything that I could do to be of assistance, I'm willing to do. So that's the update that I'm able to provide at this time, but we'll certainly keep tabs on things, and as things progress and there's something tangible to report, we will certainly do so. If there's nothing further on Fairdean, we will move on to the Leather Bucket Alley, and I believe you have some visuals that were passed out, a large visual and then some smaller ones that Mr. Campbell distributed earlier this evening. Do you want to take the lead on this? And then we have some guests here as well, and we're delighted to have you gentlemen. You want to come up to the podium here?
So, Mr. Rubel, if you want to come up and...
Want to introduce our guests?
So, Mr. Rubel was approached by Mr. Dunn and his team as they purchased the former, as we refer to it as the former Mangiamo properties, with the intent to put in some residential units up above, second and third floors, and so needing to build a staircase on the rear of the buildings, and so in order to do that, as you can see from, and thank you by the way for this is, as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So, but they would need to encroach upon the city alley and looking for an easement. But this is certainly not looking for action, but wanting, I believe, to educate and help kind of explain to council what they'll be asking for.
Mr. Rubel, before you begin, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Campbell, and myself have had the pleasure of meeting with you. We had a very productive conversation. You're now a important property owner in our community, specifically our downtown, and we're delighted to have you here this evening. Do you want to introduce yourself to council and maybe talk a little bit about your background and what made you interested in this building?
Sure. Yeah, my name is John Dunn, and I'm from Chelsea. And what got me interested in this property, my son's best friend is a CPA, purchased a small practice in town. And so Pete Tormina was one of his clients. And so he called me and said Pete was, winding down and getting ready to get out of the restaurant business and the building, and if I had any interest in the real estate. And so I said, sure, I'd take a look at it. And so I did, and then just coincidentally along around that same time, Phil from Smokehouse 52 in Chelsea was looking to expand his footprint, and so I said, well, I'm looking at this building. We kind of both came over, met with Pete, eventually put a deal together, and so I purchased the building, and then Phil has purchased the business and is in the process of doing the kind of the cosmetic renovations and kitchen work to get that open. And so the intent with, as I looked at it, was to fully utilize those second and third floors and put in 8. We want high-end apartments. They're going to be very nice. And so with that, Brian Wright from Phoenix Contractors, we've contracted them to general the project, and Scott McElrath is from Dangerous Architects, and now we're working with him architecturally. And so with wanting to do nicer apartments, the need for, we wanted to put an elevator in. So the need in order to do that, we need some egress out the back, and so Brian has worked with Gary in determining what that needs to be, and that has come to an external staircase, which will then allow us to put an elevator in, which in order for us to get the clientele we're looking for and to get better rent rates, with 12-foot ceilings and having to go 25 feet up, it's kind of too long to hoof it up there all the time. So.
Very thorough. Appreciate it. Yep. Mr. Rubel, do you want to comment now? Sorry to delay.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Brian Wright is the lead on the request for the easement to the city of Saline. And he had shown me plans of not only the interior improvements of the top 2 levels and 8 proposed apartments. I have seen the elevator detail also. And the essence of the discussion tonight is to advance the project towards developing not only a complete survey with all the utilities shown and any possible conflicts above below ground level and the concerns with the usage rights of adjacent properties, so we have to look at all of that. But it's important here that the owner receives some type of response from the City Council that this is doable from the Council's perspective, and whether it's, you know, as far as regarding the use of the alley for this emergency stairway, which is, by the way, required by the building code. Even though they have a front entrance, and that would, I believe, service them from the front, basically all the parking by the tenants, the access by the tenants, and the elevator access, which is shown here at the north end of the sketch of your drawing, which is actually going east direction, but it's the top of this drawing. I believe you have this survey. There's a lot of busyness going on here on the survey with different locations of utilities, both private and public, as well as the easement property lines and a little bit of property associated with the joint properties, which I believe there's a reciprocal easement for city use, and the overhead string lights, as well as our agreement to maintain the alley lights attached to the 100 South Ann Arbor building, which is the Benito's Pizza in the front part. So this is probably what, second generation of the survey.
There's one more that's going to be coming from your request to update it.
And so,
one more time, hopefully, and then we'll have everything on there.
So history of the alley, I remember, maybe some council members remember, when it was just gravel. And we actually would see semi-trailers backed into there to empty stuff. That's it. But that's a long time ago. That's before it was actually formally finished and developed to what we have today. It was developed in about 2 or 3 different phases over the years, back in the 1990s. I believe at one time there was a stairwell there many years ago, and I believe that was removed because it was old. There are other encroachments in the alley that actually extend farther into the alley than the proposed stairwell. Now, majority of the stairwell will be above grade. That is more than 9 feet. So visually, when you're looking down at this, you think, well, they're occupying all of this 6-foot by 32-foot long easement, which in itself is not really long. This is just a large-scale drawing, you understand. So size-wise, it's not that great. Height-wise, it'll be tall, but actually, most of it will be airspace above the alley. Only the first rung of stairs to the far west end, which is this end here, only really the first set of risers will be in, eye level, or about head level as far as walking into it or walking by it. The planter system and entry to the back part of 107 is shown here. That extends farther out into the alley. So access-wise, there's 6-foot of clear walkway through the alley from the easement, but however, in particular, to the edge of the stairwell, you'll see it's 7.8 feet between the stairwell and the adjacent building. So there's almost 8 feet there of walkway area available. That's about all I can add on that, except for on the underground utilities, majority of them are shown here, private and public. And so now the next step is we're going to have to somehow, we're going to visit on site, I believe, and we're going to look at the position of the, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's roughly 9 foundation holes. And so we have to double check make sure the foundation holes aren't in conflict with all the underground utilities, of which there is a plethora, by the way, of a storm, water, telephone, electric, our water system for our downtown sprinklers, and I believe even I don't think there's anything associated with the street lights per se, but there are telephone and probably some Comcast cables under there also. So we will double check, make sure we can resolve all those conflicts. Now, I have sent this drawing to our legal consultants at Dickinson Wright to start to prepare what it starts out as being a standard easement agreement between the city and the property owner for an easement. But we have a lot of considerations to put into that agreement. I'm certain City Council would want to interject some articles of that agreement also, so that would be taken into consideration once it's brought to you in a draft form. I believe that's all I have right now.
Okay.
It's just that, to get council's input in on what direction we should go next, and we'll follow up on that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Gentlemen, do you have any additional comments that you'd like to share at this time?
I've talked to Gary, we're the builders, Phoenix Contractors,
Right.
if this stairway's acceptable to go in. And what I've talked to Gary, working with Scott, the architect, structurally for this, I mean, if we get granted the easement, we would explore to find all the underground utilities, and the structure could, foundations could move, steel could be reconfigured a little bit to miss the utilities. Right now, we've got a drawing based on where they're at, and it looks like we may have some Comcast right about where we got the footing design, but until we know and are able to dig this up, it's all just calls to misdig, locate it. I worked with DPW out there again today, and the water line that comes into this building is east of the farthest east foundation, so we should be fine there. We'll lower it down to 5 foot where the water main is, so there's no added pressure on the water main that comes into John's building. So, and Scott, if you want.
Got any additional comments?
I don't have too much more. I was just going to say I'd like to be able to claim it was my idea to put in a rear stair in the alley, but it was actually Craig Strong of Carlisle Wortman. So your own consultant actually came up with the idea, and it works really well because it's a historic building, and it would really rip the inside of the building apart to put in a second stair inside, as well as it'd go right through the M52 kitchen space, so it's going to tear up the kitchen space. So the exterior stair in the alley is a really good idea.
So here's what I'm looking for, colleagues. I'm going to start down to my left at Councilwoman Mitchell, and then I'll end with Councilmember CO. I'm not taking a vote on this. We're not going to consider any action. I am, however, interested in any comments, sort of visceral reactions you have to this, and any questions that you may have for staff or for the applicant. So let's start with you, Ms. Mitchell.
There was a short mention made of adjacent business owners, but I would need certainly some type of written input from the 3 business owners. I use this alley frequently, and for me, it's startling to see a stairway there. It's going to take me some time. I certainly appreciate that an external stairway makes sense interior-wise, and as someone who sits on the Historic District Commission, it's startling for me. So it will take me some time, but I would certainly need the neighboring business owners' thoughts on this.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. McClellan?
Yeah, I have some of the same issues. I feel like, I use this alleyway quite a bit too. I know Main Street, kind of the design of the Leather Bucket Alley and the lights and everything there was to have a public space in the downtown that's usable to sit. I know some of the other businesses use it as well with leasing seating space and stuff, but I have a slight issue with encroaching on the public space for a private gain, especially in its singular in the apartment owner's best interest. I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily against it. I think, though, if the staircase could be less busy, and I feel like there was, I don't know structurally if that's necessary to have that many foundations, but that feels like it's a lot, and if it could structurally be done in a different way, I may feel differently about it. And then also, again, kind of getting the stakeholders in the neighboring businesses and even Main Street, because Main Street was kind of a driving force behind making this a real public gathering space downtown. So those are my thoughts at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaum?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the back staircase on the building. I'd always envisioned what they probably would end up doing in that alley was something similar to what Murphy's Crossing had done across the back of all of those buildings because of the potential for another elevator, and not sticking one building with it, but because that's not going to be the case. I agree with Councilmember McClellan about I don't know if you can make a heavier structure and not as many, 9 poles there. The way you built it on where Murphy's Crossing and so forth, Phoenix Construction did that. Right. I don't know if there's a different way to construct it. I know it might be more costly, but it wouldn't be as, maybe it could be a better way of looking at it. But I understood there historically, I can't really remember the old stairwell, but it would be appropriate to have that historically because that's what would have been there because it would have been kind of an emergency exit to get out of there. Just maybe not as large as what this is, but I know ADA code is going to require it at this point in time. So I have no problem with approving something like that because I think it's going to be needed for that building to make it safe.
I'm very comfortable with you pursuing an exterior staircase. In fact, as Mr. Gearbaum mentioned, I may even have a photo of when there was a staircase here. Somewhere in my archives. There's no doubt that there was, so there is some precedence for it. I think you can certainly use materials and create a design that is appropriate and appealing for that space. And I would note that I think the one deficiency for that building is the lack of an elevator. Even if you were not to convert the second and third floor to apartments, if you were to use it as a banquet space, similar to what Mangiamo's used, I think the lack of an elevator was very, very troubling and problematic in many occasions. So I think this is a solid plan. I think, keep moving forward, do your due diligence, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Okay. Mr. Hart?
Yes, I don't really have anything to add. I agree with possibly thinking more about design and making it less, I mean, even if it were just black instead of silver, it wouldn't pop out as much. But clearly for the safety reasons, and I also appreciate the concern for the integrity of a historic building. That's a big thing for us. I would like to hear, I would like Main Street, Leather Bucket Alley was Main Street's first big project, I think, downtown. So I think it would be important to have their input as well. I mean, they certainly balance quality of the downtown, which these apartments certainly will enhance the quality of downtown. So I wouldn't necessarily see them as being opposed to it, but just having their input, I think, would be good.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Dillon?
I have a couple of questions. First, I do think that, yeah, there should be more people invited to this party. There's the Main Street people, the Historic Commission people, that goes beyond us. And is planning need to be involved in this, in the reconstruction of the building as well as this? There's not enough of a significant change to the building that it needs to have planning involved?
It's a building. I mean, the structure itself has to go through, as they're looking at now, but with our consultants and with our building official. But as far as the site plan is not being changed, really. I mean, it's if that was formerly there, but this is more of a structural, and because it's coming before you all, because it would require an easement on city property.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure about that. And then as far as, there's a couple issues that I have with it, is a safety issue. Is it going to be an open air to where it's going to accumulate snow and be slippery when it's wet? Is there any kind of coverage for it?
Well, the code does not require that, but there's safety tread on the stairs.
Okay.
They're open treads too, so the snow and the rain comes through, so they're not slippery, is what the design is for. And then there's wire mesh on the risers and on the railings, but that's still the design that we have right now, so.
Okay. And just to clarify, this is just an emergency exit. People will not be entering the building through this stairwell?
It's either. Because there's a very nice elevator right next to it, we're thinking most people would use the elevator, but it's egress and potentially for ingress.
Okay, because that was my next question is like, how are you going to secure it to make sure that you're not just getting people walking up your stairwell and doing things like throwing things off of it, you know, to the people that are sitting below?
The second and the third floor doors would be locked.
Okay, but the stairwell will be open to have full access to it?
Correct.
Okay. My other big concern is keeping that area clean to where there's a stairwell similar to this at the building next to it that sits next to our parking lot that has become a collection for bicycles and dead plants, and it's very unsightly. I mean, that would be a concern for me.
And if I might, certainly could write that into any requirement, to any easement to say, you know, that it couldn't be used for any kind of storage or anything of that nature.
Okay. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Seal.
One of the deficits I suffer as I get older is hearing. I didn't hear where you say this elevator might be.
It's the 103 door entrance to the back side there. If you're looking at this,
Show us on our picture?
well,
Can you see it? Is it
Is it
this
here at
door?
this property line?
it's the Montiano door.
Right.
What's going to happen is this window is going to turn into a door to be an elevator lobby, which is right at the back of the stairs. And then this will be an entrance to the barbecue, right next door. So, so the window next to 103 entrance will be taken down to the ground and concrete come out into there, and then the elevator lobby is just inside the door.
Very good, thank you. The other,
Go ahead, Mr. Seal, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The other comment that I had was to match that of Mrs. Trahar, and that perhaps this whole view could be softened somewhat either through design elements or through a darker color. I'm not a designer, but shown as it is here in this silver color, it sort of sticks out.
I think Scott just did that for that
Sure.
particular, yeah, it's going to
For
be.
a rendering.
Yeah, for
I
a rendering,
understand.
it's going to be black, and we will make it as, you know, as sleek as we can in the design, and, you know, the buildings that we have, that we manage, it'll be impeccably taken care of, and so we want to be good neighbors and make sure everybody's on board with things. And, you know, my thought in, you know, with the building is that, you know, whether it's commercial office or, you know, currently is very underutilized, those second and third floors, and so therefore, in meeting with Brian and Todd and some other realtors and the like, they just said, you know, apartments is the thing you want to do there. And so from the floor to the first floor to the bottom of the third floor, it's 25 feet. So whether it's commercial office or whether it's apartments, the need for that in order to really, you know, get the kind of clientele we want for those apartments, it's really beneficial. We eliminate probably the 50, 60, 70-year-old folks, because, you know, I'm in my mid-50s and I wouldn't want to, you know, go up 3 flights of stairs to get to an apartment. But so we think it's a big benefit for the building, and of course, you know, once it's completed with the investment we're putting in there, the tax base will, you know, be a benefit, you know, for the city. So we're going to do, you know, all we can to make sure it's a very clean, sleek design, and as Gary said, the first set of risers, you know, once you get up those, the vast majority of all this is in the air.
Right.
And,
The other comment that I have, based on my past life as a police officer, and having been forced to walk the beat many nights in downtown Ann Arbor, and prowling the very many fire escapes that were there, I know that these do tend to attract people. especially people who are leaving liquor establishments late in the evening. I'm not sure whether a doorway or something, even a wire gate that could be keyed with, for the residents above or something like that. Might keep some of these unwanted folks off that stairway when they didn't belong there. Just a thought.
Yeah,
I know
that's
all these
something we
things
can
cost
look at.
money, and I'm not trying to heap that on you, but.
Well, for me, in the grand scheme of the whole project, those types of things, I'm not adverse at all to investing in if because again, we want to be good neighbors. We want it to be a great, asset to the downtown, because hopefully the type of people we put in there are going to be moving around town and spending money and the like. So yeah, we'll take all those into consideration for sure.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I think you got some good feedback. Look forward to working with you on this. Appreciate your attendance this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate yours as well. Last up, Mr. Campbell, do you want to briefly go over the North Ann Arbor Street sidewalk handrail? That's a mouthful.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you all may recall and hopefully have seen, I think they're pretty attractive, the railing that's been installed along the sidewalk on the west side of the 100 block of North Ann Arbor Street as a result of with the new ADA sidewalk and the raised sidewalk from the streetscape project. And so you may recall we went through the process of determining what type of railing, and not just along the north and south on the sidewalk, but also for the stairs. And there was a couple choices for the stairs that were looked at and considered. One was, as you see in the pictures here, of course, what I would call the tube steel, and then of course the more decorative that is matching to the railing. And so what was decided was the decorative handrails for the steps would match that's on the sidewalk. However, unfortunately, with some miscommunication or misunderstanding, when we sent out the RFP for the handrails, the specification was the pipe, the steel here, and so we certainly have a couple choices here, and we are trying to make some lemonade out of lemons, if you will, where we are, if in fact we want to continue on with the decorative railing, we're looking at possible alternative locations that we could utilize the rolled steel, the steel piping handrails at some of our other city facilities. And then the quote, it said would be an additional $2,136.04 to get the proper railings fabricated. So that's where we're at. So and again, I apologize for walking this on, but it's obviously a time-sensitive thing where we want to get this completed. And so I mean the reason because of obviously the issue, they've already fabricated those handrails, and would like to see what council's thoughts are.
Mr. Campbell, if there's consensus to invest the extra $2,000 and some odd dollars for the decorative handrails, is it your intent to form that to create a motion that we would entertain at our next council meeting?
If you want, we certainly could do that. If you wanted to wait a couple weeks, whatever council's desire is.
I'm comfortable waiting a couple weeks. My own preference is I would prefer to see the decorative rails, and if we can make good use of the existing rails that we have, fine. And I'm pretty confident that we could. I think there's some existing facilities in the city that could use those. So that's my thought. Let me start with Councilwoman Mitchell, and I'll end again with Mr. Seo.
I'm taken aback by this error. I think it shows a lack of attention to detail. And I really take seriously our charge to spend city money wisely. So I don't know that I'm ready to have any concrete thoughts other than being displeased that this has happened.
Okay. Ms. McClellan?
I think, yeah, again, I echo what Ms. Mitchell says. I do think we need to have the decorative ones. from a design standpoint, putting those tube things on the decorative fence as it is now, not acceptable, so.
Mr. Gearbob?
Well, I don't want to spend the $2,100, so I'm fine with the tubes.
Okay. Ms. Tahar?
I also don't want to spend the extra $2,136. However, I'm not sure I would be happy with the tubes unless I could see them. Is there a way to see what they would look like? I mean, they're already fabricated, right?
They are fabricated, yes.
So
Have they arrived?
Yeah, I knew I believe they were ready to install them when we contacted them, so we certainly could follow up and take some, see if we could get them to come up and at least stand them up and take some photos and utilize that.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I mean, I recognizing that the picture of the tube-style railings is on a much longer set of stairs. I can't imagine.
Sure.
Like the difference in impact. Sorry.
No, Ms. Dillon?
Well, I will start with that I'm also very disappointed that we once again have yet another oversight. That being said, I'm not in favor of the tubes. Having a family member that has dexterity issues with their hands, those tubes are not conducive to wrapping your hand around, and they are not really a safety measure, in my opinion, because you don't have a full firm grip on them. That being said, I don't know what we're going to do with those if they're cut for a one-step space. I mean, I'm not sure where you would put them. If they're already cut for our space, is that what you're implying, Mr. Campbell, that they're already?
Correct.
I mean, it's what, like a 2-foot like handle. So I'm not sure where else you'd be able to use them. So I guess they would end up going off to like the scrap heap or some arts and culture project that maybe somebody could make them into something fun and funky somewhere. I think it would also look somewhat awkward to not continue the style of the railing that's already there. So, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I mean, I think I would be in favor of sucking it up and paying the $2,000.
Mr. Seal?
Seems to me our $5,000 surplus next year is going quickly. I think that it's important that we continue the same design and that we spend the $2,136 to do so. And I guess I would echo my colleague's disappointment in how we ended up at this situation.
Sounds like there's consensus then to draft the corresponding appropriate motion and have it on the agenda for our next meeting. Quickly, please, ladies.
Yeah, just a question, if we spend, I mean, I know Mrs. Terhart would like to see them, but is there a way to maybe have the company or someone else do a rendering before we spend time with DPW putting them in and then having to take them back out again because they look really bad?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, they would just be temporary. We wouldn't install them.
Okay.
Mr. Haar, did you have a comment or question?
Well, if my addition is correct, it appears that keeping the same design railings is the preferred option. So I would not be in favor, necessarily need to have extra staff time spent on this.
Okay. Okay. So, Ms. Dillon?
I wanted to know what the time frame would be now to have these manufactured and what our install would be for them.
We'll follow up. We didn't get a lead time. They didn't provide a lead time. At least typically it's a couple weeks, but it just depends on the fabricator and what they have ahead of us. So.
My next part to that would be, would it be beneficial for us to just make a motion and vote on this now so that we can get the process going rather than waiting another 2 weeks before we're even going to submit for it?
You could do that if the chair entertains any motion that's appropriate. We don't really have much to digest in addition to the quote that he provided, but if that's your desire, offer a motion.
Okay. Well, there we go. I will. I'm going to move to, what am I moving to purchase and install?
6 handrails for the steps on North Ann Arbor Street
Using the Ultra Brochure railing material
at a cost not to exceed
at a cost not to exceed $2,136.
I'll second that. And 4 cents.
Oh, and 4 cents, excuse me. We can round it up if you'd like. I'll give you all the way to $40, so $21.40.
Well, the quote
Is that a quote price of like an actual out-the-door price, or
yeah,
is that?
their quote is $21.36 and 4 cents.
Okay, well then that's the number we're putting in.
I'll second that.
Reread the motion.
I'm still typing it.
Okay, you got it done.
To purchase and install the Ultra Brochure railing material used as handrail, use as step handrail at the cost not to exceed, and I don't have the cost not to.
213604.
Mr. Mayor, if I might suggest that we also include to be located at the 3 steps in the 100 block of North Ann Arbor Street.
That can be added as long as the mover and second don't object.
No objection.
Mr. Har?
Yes, that's fine.
At the
Do we
3
need?
steps,
Hold on, one person at a time here, folks. Go ahead, ask your question.
sorry, at the 3 steps,
Located in the 100 block of North Ann Arbor Street.
okay, thank you.
If I could.
Please.
Something about per Adrian Tecumseh Fence Company's proposal. That's who would be awarded to. They're the ones that put in the railing up top on the sidewalk. And that's who gave us a quote, that's who would be installing.
I'm sorry, can I hear, I didn't quite
She's
hear
got to
that.
finish typing it, but then when she's done, she'll repeat it.
To purchase and install the Ultra Brochure railing material used as step handrail at a cost not to exceed $2,136.04 at the 3 steps located in the 100 block of North Ann Arbor Street per the Adrian Tecumseh Fence proposal.
You good at moving that, Ms. Dillon?
What?
I got to get your first. Are
Yes.
you good at moving that? Mr. Har, are you good seconding that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Ms. Mitchell, did you still have questions?
I want to double check the name. Is that correct? The Ultra Brochure, the railing material, the pretty one on the bottom, that matches,
how it's
right?
labeled.
That's why we're here. Okay, so.
That was my question as well, whether that is, the Ultra Brochure railing is the railing that's already there, correct? Can we, I don't know if there's a way to just make sure identical to the railing that's already there.
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Additional comments on the motion? Well, as a matter of substance, I have no objection with the motion, but it deviates from our traditional protocol, and I see no reason to vote now. I would rather go through the normal process and entertain it in 2 weeks, so I will be voting no. There additional comments or questions? Then proceed to vote. You want to reread the motion one more time?
To purchase and install the Ultra Brochure railing material used as step handrail at a cost not to exceed $2,136.04 at the 3 steps located in the 100 block of North Ann Arbor Street per the Adrian Tecumseh Fence proposal.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Is there anything else to be brought forward this evening? Quickly.
Just really quickly, and I just wanted to, because I certainly don't disagree with any of the concerns and comments that council have brought forth, but I will assure you that even more upset than you all would is staff, and because we do take great pride in what we do, and we do take great pride in being the utmost stewards of tax dollars. So again, we do, unfortunately, we did make a mistake, and we're hopefully learn from it and move forward. But again, just so you know, it's certainly not taken lightly that this happened.
Anything else to be brought before council this evening? Well, then we'll proceed to our second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
I'm sorry for the late, but I want to do my 3 minutes. It's regarding the closing of streets. I have a thing about closing streets and safe sidewalks. I would hope that they are going to open up the street at 8:30. And another thing, I appreciate all the concern as far as everybody likes a party, but I think that there should be a form, not only as far as that applies to everyone, but also insurance. To say save harmless on a piece of paper doesn't mean anything. The city could be sued, in fact, if someone, whatever. And I think that's very important that that insurance is paid for as far as save harmless for the taxpayers. The other thing as far as opening it up. I think as far as to say the DPW, oh, it doesn't take a minute for them to drop this off. Yes, but when you have parties, you can have 2 or 3, and it's always on Friday night or Saturday night. And I think there should be a cost to that. There's a cost to the walk as far as through the cemetery for whatever, and I think there should be a cost. That's part of having a party, I would think. The other thing is, as far as I would hope that it didn't fall on deaf ears as far as absent seats cannot make any discussion. And I would hope that the people who are absent for their committee appointments will be requested to be in attendance. Thank you. Oh, I think farmers market's on Thursday at the farm too, isn't it? This Thursday?
You already announced
Okay.
that. Additional public comments.
Mine is very wide. Me and Brian Marlowe have talked about it. This is about the concealed weapons permit that the state of Michigan wants to pass. I'm for it. There's a bunch of bills behind it. HR 219, HR 220, and so forth. You can look them up online. I am asking the city council, and I've been working with Linda, the state legislator or whatever, to pass our concealed weapons ban, where you can have it concealed without having it concealed, is what I meant to say, is without having it concealed, getting rid of the CPL license. My theory is that I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I would at least like to hear back to know what you guys think of not having the CPL out there, where it doesn't have, where us NAR hunters don't have to pay for it every year, $180. So that's my concern, is getting rid of the CPL in the city of Saline and all over the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. Additional citizen comments? Well, let me just say that Mr. Rockwell is indeed correct. There are a number of laws, or actually, excuse me, there's a number of pieces of legislation pertaining to concealed weapons that are being actively considered by the House of Representatives right now in Lansing. I would encourage you to take a look at those bills and the impact that it would have on local jurisdictions and on public safety. Maybe you think they're good, maybe you think they're bad, but I would encourage my council colleagues and my fellow citizens to take a look at those bills. You can find an analysis at the Michigan Legislature website. And with that, unless there is anything else to be brought before Saline City Council this evening, I would note that we have an upcoming meeting on June the 19th, and then our following meeting is on July the 3rd, and we are likely to have a work meeting at 6 p.m. on July the 3rd to discuss annexation broadly, and then a request by some deed holders of a parcel in Saline Township. They would like to consider that parcel, they would like to see City Council, consider bringing that parcel into the city of Saline. So we will confirm that in the coming days and weeks, but again, tentatively plan on a work meeting at 6 p.m. on the 3rd. Again, there are no absences this evening, so at this time the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:39 p.m.
So moved?
Moved by Dylan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by CO. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting